Hello, welcome to the Stanley Museum of Art. My name is Kimberly Danc. I'm the curator of learning engagement here at the Stanley Museum of Art. Welcome to tonight's Grant Wood Fellow Lecture. It's by Kieron Dwayne Sargeant, entitled The Limbo Dance from Backyard to Concert and Commercial Dance Stage. As we're just getting started here, I'm going to read the University of Iowa's Acknowledgement of Land and Sovereignty. So if you'll just take a moment with me. The University of Iowa is located on the homelands of the Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Bahoji, Iowa, Chickapew, Kickapoo, Ametmneewak, Menominee, Miamaka, Miami, Natuchi, Missouri, Omaha, Omaha, Wasaji, Osage, Jiware, Oto, Ottawa, Ottawa, Ponca, Ponca, Potawatomi, Neshnabe, Potawatomi, Meskwaki, Nemahaki, Sakawaki, Sac and Fox, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, Sioux, Sanish, Nobutka, Nuweta, 3 affiliated tribes, and Ho-Chunk, Winnebago nations. The following tribal nations: Omaha, Omaha Tribe of Nebraska and Iowa, Ponca, Ponca Tribe of Nebraska, Meskwaki, Sac and Fox of the Mississippi and Iowa, and Ho-Chunk, Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska nations, continue to thrive in the state of Iowa, and we continue to acknowledge them. As an academic institution, it is our responsibility to acknowledge the sovereignty and the traditional territories of these tribal nations, and the treaties that were used to remove these tribal nations, and the histories of dispossession that have allowed for the growth of this institution since 1847. Consistent with the university's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, understanding the historical and current experiences of Native peoples will help inform the work we do collectively as a university to engage in building relationships through academic scholarship, collaborative partnerships, community service, enrollment and retention efforts, acknowledging our past, our present, and future Native nations. And to introduce Kieron properly, please welcome Christopher McMillan, who's an assistant professor of dance and gender, women's, and sexuality studies.
Good evening. It's a thrilling time to be here with you all while we welcome Kieron. It's my pleasure to introduce the Grant Wood Fellow in Interdisciplinary Performance, Mr. Kieron Dwayne Sargeant. Sargeant is a Trinidadian-born interdisciplinary artist, choreographer, and dance researcher emerging out of the African Caribbean tradition. Over the past 20 years, he has been involved in documenting, assessing, analyzing dance traditions of the Caribbean, and establishing a canon of dance teachings and workshops informed by his research to popularize the ancestral survival of the movement traditions between the Caribbean and Western Africa. His research focuses on the field of African, Caribbean, and African diasporic dance practices. In particular, his work explores both the regenerative and deconstructionist methodological approaches to engaging with the African traditional Trinidadian dances for the concert, commercial, and contemporary dance world. His current research focuses on embodied ethnography as a technology for tracing Africanist diasporic meaning-making across time and space through the body in performance, and particularly through the Black body in performance. He has previously presented his research at the Preaching as Performance Conference at the University of Calgary in Canada, at the NECPOC Dance and Popular Culture Conference at Worcester State University. In his seminal work, Choreographic Mourning, a ritual of spiritual Baptist faith in Trinidad and Tobago, a work that combines deep reflection on his own background and brings to light his tradition in the concert stage, remains remarkable. His latest work, He Shall Walk, is a solo performance presented by Northwestern Black Arts Consortium and the Black Arts Archive, Challenging of Translation, the Sawyer Seminar, which was sponsored by the Mellon Foundation. The solo performance continues Sargeant work on African-American religious practices and African religious practices and aesthetics by connecting African-American dance spirituals to the spiritual Baptist faith in Trinidad and Tobago. Dutali Beatty's The Mourner's Bench, 1947. Mr. Sargeant was a collaborator on the Mellon-funded project Writing the Body with Dr. Laura Calhoun Booth, an associate professor at Communications Department in Miami-Dade College. His choreography has been presented nationally at SUNY Brockport, Florida State University, Northwestern University, Universal Soul Circus, Air Dance Consortium, 612 Gallery, internationally in Nigeria, in Canada, in Senegal, in Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Mexico, London, Barcelona, Portugal, and Malga. Mr. Sargeant holds an MFA in Dance Performance and Choreography from Florida State University, an MA in Community Dance Practice from Ohio University, and a BA in Dance from the University of West Indies. In 2020, he was awarded a place in the Helen Pickett Choreographic Essentials Program, receiving the Bella Winthrop King Art Endowment Award. In short, Kieron is amazing. He has blessed our community with different practices that open up what the body can do and what the Black body can do. We have been blessed to have him here, and we will not see the likes of such an artist when he's gone. For Kieron Sargeant, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. And today I'm going to talk to you about something that I have been researching during my time as a fellow at the University of Iowa. I found myself researching the Limbo dance for the past year because what is happening in our country, Trinidad and Tobago, is that some of our traditional dances are disappearing. And I wrote to the government of Trinidad and Tobago requesting a grant for me to go into the archives, right? And the archives have been around for like almost 60 years, and artists like myself couldn't get access to that archive because of the government is holding it so close to themselves. But writing a strong proposal and being able to get into the archive, I decided that I wanted to further talk more about the Limbo dance and the sacredness of the Limbo dance. So yes, so I'm going to start off today with my talk, Limbo dance, from backyard to concert and commercial dance stage. Okay, so I just want to open up the floor. I like my talk to be like, audience participation. So anybody could tell me about the Limbo dance, what you know about the Limbo dance, if you have ever done the Limbo dance. It doesn't matter in what context, it doesn't matter where you have done the Limbo dance. Just be free to talk, just to tell me what you have done in the previous, yes, being around and probably in a party or on a cruise ship. Yeah, just, yeah.
Elementary school PE class.
Elementary school PE class. Anybody else?
Just last night, we were talking about doing it on roller skates. That is a big tradition.
Yes.
Birthday parties.
I've seen that fire engines with student groups.
Okay. Anybody else? I'll take one more. Middle school dance. Right. Okay, so just to give you some historical understanding about the Limbo dance. The Limbo dance has a long and complex history that spans across multiple cultures and regions. The Limbo dance made its way to the Caribbean, particularly to the island of Trinidad and Tobago during the mid to the late 1800s. According to Julia Edwards, the enslaved Africans contorted themselves into human spiders as a form of punishment by the Spaniards. So what Julia was telling us about is this whole idea of how Limbo came about. So what she did, when I went into the archive, she did a very nice description of what it looked like when the slaves used to contort themselves into human spiders in order to be fed. And that's how the whole idea of Limbo came about. So I'm just going to show you a video of this demonstration of the whole idea of how Limbo came about. So this was a form of punishment for the enslaved Africans by the Spaniards. Their hands were tied behind their backs, and this was a way of feeding them on the ships. So this was the whole idea of this was the whole idea of the body crawling under the bar. It's very painful to watch, but this is her interpretation, and from her research and from getting this information in the archive, this is how Limbo started. So this was a way for the enslaved Africans to be fed by the Spaniards. So he's traveling vertically with his hands tied behind his back. Right, so that's just a brief history behind how the Limbo dance came about. The Limbo dance achieved mainstream popularity during the 1950s in Trinidad and Tobago. The Limbo dance social and spiritual significance. The Limbo dance was considered to be sacred due to the spiritual references within the practice. In Trinidad and Tobago, the Limbo dance was performed at funerals and wakes in the backyard of the deceased as a way of mourning, expressing grief, and celebrating their life. So, all over the world, we do wakes differently. So I'm just want to open up the floor again, like for you to share with me, like what you know about a wake, like how a wake is celebrated in your culture. Would you be able to share that with me? Some ideas about how wake is done in your culture? Anybody? Sharing food. Anybody else? Sharing stories. Gathering. Drinking. Vigil. Yes. Anybody else? Okay, good. So a wake is defined as a nightly ceremony that is held for a deceased person by their family, friends, and well-wishers with the purpose of preparing the deceased spirit for the afterlife and providing comfort to the grieving family and friends. So to talk more about the significance of the Limbo dance in the wake. So coming from Trinidad and Tobago and growing up with my great-grandparents and my grandparents, I learned a lot about the whole idea of the limbo inside of wakes. So in the 40s and 50s, we didn't have any funeral homes. So what they used to do, they used to house the body inside of the home, right? On top, a big slab of ice covered down with a white cloth. So every day they will go and attend to this body that is in the house and, put different preservatives just to keep the body from rotting until it's their burial. So the body was in the house while it was said that the Limbo dance was performed to elevate the soul of the deceased that was in the house, right? So every night, persons from the community will come to this house in the backyard and they will perform the Limbo. So the Limbo starts from the lowest bar to the highest bar, right? So every time the bar is lifted, the soul is said to be elevated to its final resting place. So every night, the people from various parts of the community will come and bend under these bars, starting from the lowest one to the highest one, until it's a final night of burial, right? So going in the archive again, I was able to see how this was done through the body every night. So it will start from the lowest bar, and then it will go to the second bar. So every time it passes, it said that the soul is being elevated on a different level on the ancestral plane.
This is the final bar that after 9 nights of saying prayers and penance, of passing on the limbo bar, the soul of the departed has risen from that low state of limbo up to the heavens.
So the limbo dance was practiced in Trinidad and Tobago as part of the Way complex to mark the rite of passage of liberation of the spirit of a deceased person of African descent. So the Way complex is comprised of a series of things: the laying of the deceased in the house, a prayer service, singing of hymns, the serving of cricks, biscuit, and coffee. So in Trinidad, if you want to choke, then it's to eat a cricks biscuit. It's the most driest biscuit you could have. It's very, very, very dry. So if you want to choke, they tell you, oh, just have a cricks biscuit, right? And the playing of cards, the playing of drums, tambu bamboo playing, songs sung in patois, bongo dancing, and limbo dancing. So bongo dancing is also an offshoot of limbo dancing. It's the whole idea of crossing over. So most of the steps is done where you cross boom, back, boom, back, boom, back. It's the whole idea of, the soul crossing over onto the other side, right? So bongo is also a funeral dance of Trinidad and Tobago. So this video that I'm going to show you here is a wake in Rio Claro in 1960 in Trinidad and Tobago. So you can see like how they used to celebrate the dead in the 60s in Trinidad and Tobago. So this is Crick's biscuit. So I hope nobody choked that night. Sorry. So it's all about community involvement. So people from all parts of various parts of the village will come. And just one thing to know is that Trinidad is a multicultural space. We have both African, East Indian, Chinese, Syrian, Lebanese, Spanish that lives on the island. And to give you some more context is that Venezuela is 25 minutes away from Trinidad and Tobago. So we have a lot of Spanish influence inside of Trinidad and Tobago. So this is a wake. You wouldn't see something like this now in 2023. You will see people just coming and having alcohol and just sitting around. But in the 60s, it was more about reverence. It was more about community coming together to really celebrate the dead rather than just turning it into a party. So now in 2023, we are having parties to celebrate the dead. So it's just like people come drink alcohol. They stay and, it's like whatever. And then after the funeral's like 3 days after. But before it was like, let's celebrate this person. So if I could skip a little further, I could just show you. Sorry. So this is tambo bamboo playing and also bongo dancing. So this was a way of the community celebrating the dead. So they will do bongo, they will sing songs in patois, sometimes in English, and they will dance until about 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. in the morning. And it was so lively that, the family of the deceased usually have to come and ask you to leave. Because they will sit there until the sun comes up and just sing and play tambo bamboo and dance the bongo and also the limbo. So community has an archive for forming loss and memory through the limbo dance. So the elders in the community acted as griot, which is a storyteller. So they used to come and, share stories about the deceased. So they will come every night and, give like a lot of past stories about the person who would have passed away, and also the community will all, share stories, something like in a circle talk. They will all share stories about the deceased person. So this picture is basically like what happens before a wake. So the persons will go to the end of the street. Persons will go to the end of the street and they will like march in until they reach to the deceased house. So therefore the flambeau, we call it a flambeau in the Caribbean, which is like a torch. Like this is a light. It's a glass bottle with a piece of fabric that is lit with kerosene. So that's like a light to send the deceased to the final place. So they all walk in with this flambeau until they reach to the backyard of the deceased house. So persons will come, as I previously said, they will come and perform the limbo, perform the bongo, and all these dances are dances of memory, dances of loss, thinking about this whole idea of the body being on the slave ship and the torture that the enslaved Africans had to endure in order for this form to be what it is today. So that was like a quick oversight of the limbo that was done in the backyard. Now we're moving into the 50s. We bring in Julia Edwards, the lady who changed the whole idea of limbo, who took the whole idea of limbo and brought it into a concert dance format, right? The limbo gained its popularity in the 1950s at nightclubs and theaters located in Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. So Port of Spain is the capital of Trinidad and Tobago. and quickly spread to other Caribbean islands, New York, Canada, and throughout the world. The limbo dance was first brought to stage by Trinidad and Tobago dance pioneer Julia Edwards in 1957. Miss Edwards was known as the First Lady of Limbo and for her role in popularizing the dance as an indigenous funerary folk dance of Trinidad and Tobago. So what Julia Edwards did is that she took this sacred form from the backyard and turned it into a concert dance, right? So in taking this dance, what Julia did is that she flipped the whole idea of the pole for the limbo dance, where she started from the top to go down to create spectacle and to bring audience, bring adrenaline to the audience. So she took that, all the sacredness from this form and bring it onto a concert dance stage. And also what she did is that she made a lot of changes to the form. She brought costumes, costumes. She brought fire. She brought human limbo. So I can just show you some of these changes that she brought to the limbo, moving it from the backyard to the concert dance stage.
This public dancing event and to really bring the national dance of the country, when we started to perform down on the base for the Americans, and we started getting a lot of tourists coming in, and they all wanted to know, what is the dance, the national dance of the country. We had to do it on the reverse. Long ago in religion, it was done from below to go up. With limbo, we started from on top to go down. We started to say, I want somebody to limbo like me. I want somebody to limbo lower than me. Because we wanted to have guest participation. It had to be something that we can involve all the tourists that was coming in, we wanted to involve them. We can do it only by this way, having them to come and dance limbo with us.
So this was at Hilton Hotel. So what Julia do is that she created a space for her dance and to encourage tourists to participate in the limbo dance. So mind you, when Julia started to do this whole new idea of the limbo, she started to the elders in Trinidad and Tobago were kicking up a storm. They were angry, they were annoyed, they were upset about how she took this sacred practice and make it into this whole spectacle. And what happened is that the government also ran with it. The government took a lot of their funding and gave it to her to perpetuate this type of limbo dance in order to encourage tourists. So when tourists come to Trinidad on the cruise ships, this was the first thing they were greeted with, the limbo dance. So the government built a whole complex called the offshore complex in Trinidad and Tobago. So as soon as all these beautiful cruise ships from all the parts of the world dock, first thing they see is Julia Edwards and limbo dance. And people were furious because we were looking at Julia as someone who was destroying our practice, but I don't think she was destroying it. I think she was revolutionizing it, like bringing it into a new light, thinking about a new way of performing the limbo. Because I know nobody want to see a person bend from the lowest part to the highest part. I don't think any who will want to see that? Who will sit and want to see that? So I think what she was doing is finding a new way for the dance to exist in the contemporary now. So what she did is that she changed a lot of even with the costume, she brought her own style to the costume, and she used a lot of frills. And I have some ideas of the costume here, and I make my own costume, so I can just show you some of this, because these are the stuff that she started to use for, you know, for the limbo dance. Could I have some lights? Oh, sorry. Yes. So these were like the style of costumes that she brought to the stage. It was very showgirlish, right? So there's a lot of frills because we had Spanish influence in our country. A lot of frills were attached to our costumes. So this would have been like a skirt piece for the limbo dance. It's very pretty. So I can't put it off because it can't fit me, but I'll try to give you a little. So it goes like this. So frills on the side, and this was the height of the loincloth. And the loincloth was very sacred in the dance because it was used to block the middle part, the private area, right? But showgirl, government giving you thousands of dollars, you do what you wanted to do with the costume. So this would have been like a skirt piece for the dance, and these things would have gone in the hands like this, right? So you see the Spanish influence in our costume, the frills. You will see this probably in Puerto Rico, Cuba, one of those islands, right? So this would have been the handpiece for the dance, and then she started to decorate all these bras with all these different, you know, how should I say, different sequins and stuff, right? Oh, and this is just to carry it back a little bit. This is like some of the clothes that they would have wearing wigs long time. Very, very to do the limbo. Very, very pale, no color, right? Because it was sacred, and most of the time it would have been black and white because that's a form of mourning for us. I think it's all over the world. People wear black and white as a form of mourning. So you saw, let me just take you back to this section of the
dancing and to learn anticipation.
right.
To be something that we can involve.
So I want you to think about this for a minute, and when I go into the next slide, then you'll see what I'm leading up to.
To come and dance Limbo with us.
All right, so there's two images on the screen, right? One is what you will see in a wedding, and one is what you will see in a wake setting, starting with the lowest part. And because Julia Edwards used to encourage the tourists to do the limbo in that format, it came to United States and ended up being like this, and different parts of the world, and being like people were just going under different pieces of fabric, you know, in the parties, on roller skates, all those things, right? So I just want to, like share this information because I think it's important for us to know that this dance is a sacred dance, right? And it's a dance, I know plenty of you all don't probably have the context about it, but it's very sacred. And, this was something that we were trying, not for the dance to reach in this sort of context. But coming to Trinidad and having the tourists do the dance like that, people felt that it was okay to go back and do the limbo dance in this context, right? So there's two terms: cultural arrogation versus cultural auto-culturalization. So cultural arrogation refers to the act of taking, copying, or misrepresenting a cultural element or artifact without justification. This often involves the lack of understanding or respect for the cultural significance or the significance of the cultural element in question. Autoculturalization, as coined by Thomas Talowa Presto, the process of African diasporas or minority using their own cultural practices and traditions to represent themselves in art. So that will give you a clear understanding of the two image that I just presented. So these are some of the dramaturgical changes that happened in the limbo dance when Julia Edwards started to like play around with the idea of the dance, taking it from the backyard to the concert dance stage. The limbo dance was changed to non-participation spectatorship, the changing of the stick from low to high to low, the adding of fire to the limbo pole, the addition of glass bottles to place the limbo pole lower, the invention of human limbo, using human bodies to formulate patterns and structure for the dancers to pass under. So this is Julia Edwards' interpretation of the limbo dance when she brought it to the concert dance stage. Sorry.
Performances, but highlight the spirit performances. But...
Sorry, I'm skipping ahead of time.
This is when we started to use derivations and started flames.
So you see the difference, the bars going from the highest to the lowest. And she also made the costume to represent us as a people, to represent our carnival and the French influence inside of our carnival. Now she's going to show you the whole idea of the human limbo, where she constructed to use human bodies to formulate structure and architect. So this is human limbo. You just realize the steps are very grounded.
what is called the human limbo. This innovation is done where boys is given the initiation from boyhood into man. They must show their strength.
So yes, so that's the human limbo.
Complex performances that highlight the spirit.
So now, so that was Julia Edwards, a quick flash of Julia Edwards' era in taking the limbo dance and bringing it onto the concert dance stage. So now we are moving into 2023, no, not 2023, like 2015, where you have myself coming in as a Trinidadian coming to Universal Circus to choreograph for a commercial setting, right? So coming to Universal Circus, I remember bringing some dancers from Trinidad and Tobago to take part in the circus to work for a 12-month contract. So I remember trying to bring the limbo dance from the backyard setting into this commercial stage. And I can remember Mr. Walker, and mind you, he's Black. I remember him telling me that he don't want the limbo dance in that context. He wanted the limbo dance from the highest to the lowest. So I was explaining to him and telling him about, I'm trying to preserve these traditional dances, and I would love to experiment the dance like that in a commercial world and in a commercial state, sorry. And he was like, no, I don't want it. I don't want that kind of let me find the word he used. He used a kind of funny word that offended me. And that was so long ago. That was like 8 years ago. But I know he had used a word that offended me, and I was ready to give up the job as a choreographer for the circus. I was like, I'm not going against tradition. But then coming to the United States and thinking about the whole idea of survival and thinking about the whole idea of that I have to eat and I have to live and I have to create and I have to, move forward as an artist. So coming in with all this various training in diasporic dance and traditional dance, Caribbean dance, and also having understanding of contemporary American dance, I created my own style for the commercial stage. And some of the things that happened, the fusion of the limbo with contemporary American dance aesthetics, the removal of rituals. So I removed all rituals. There was no sort of ritual in the dance because it was on a commercial dance stage. Julia Edwards still had one or two little bits of ritualistic practices inside of her routines, but I made this whole thing to suit a commercial stage. Also, the costuming, very showgirl, the staging of the piece in theater in a round. So this piece was done in a circle, and the use of paraphernalia / objects, and the hypersexualization of bodies. So in the circus, we had Black and brown bodies. We had bodies, Latino bodies, Latinx bodies, bodies from Trinidad and Tobago. So there was a mixture of bodies inside of the the space and this whole what he wanted that the limbo to look, what he wanted the female dancers to look is sexy, right? So I did my whole creation because, as I told you, I wanted to survive as an artist. I wanted to make money. I was now coming into the United States. So this is what I created for Universal Circus. The circus is touring currently with choreography. Like this, I continue to choreograph for the circus up to this year. I think this will be my last year choreographing for the circus as I move into a new journey in my life. I don't think I want to go back into this whole model. I think I want to start preserving our traditional dances instead of, you know, kind of like bringing it into bringing it into this kind of how to put it, bringing it into something that is new. But I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about if I want to work in this sort of system or if I want to continue to be a traditionalist and stick with traditional dances and just move forward. But I think when I work in this format, I think it brings up a lot of questions of authenticity with the limbo dance and like what the elders will be saying, like currently, like the now elders, like what they will be saying about this version of the limbo dance. So I'll just show you a quick video of the limbo dance and where it is right now in the commercial now, surviving in the contemporary now. So yeah. This was last year tour for Universal Circus. Yes, so that's a version of the limbo dance that is happening currently at Universal Circus, and there's other persons who are also performing the limbo dance on talk shows. This is Shemika Campbell. She's a Guinness World Record holder from Trinidad and Tobago, and this is her performance on Pickler and Ben Daily Show. She is from the city of San Fernando, where I'm from. She's a close friend of mine, but she's taking the limbo dance in another format. She's more into like daytime television shows and also halftime at NBA games.
Oh, come on. Oh my God. What? What? Oh my God. Whoa. Oh, hey. Oh my goodness. Oh, come on, man. Why? Let's get look. What? Oh!
So Shemika decided to go that route. So I went the route in the circus. Shemika went the route to daytime shows. And my niece decided to take this to TikTok. So this is where it is right now in the commercial world. It's on TikTok. So you see the commercial stages of it being in the circus, it being on daytime shows, and now it's on TikTok. But that's a whole story I have that I could share with my niece. She's doing this with all these different paraphernalia with fire and having the world attempt it, because everything on TikTok, you follow it, right? But I haven't seen a successful person as yet. But this is my niece, Zakita Edinburgh. She's a Limbo queen of Trinidad and Tobago. She was trained by myself. She is now on tour with the Universal Circus. And, she just decided that she wants to spread this version of the Limbo dance on TikTok. That's not absolutely. So she's telling you, don't hurt yourself. Just remember, don't hurt yourself. Even if you're trying it, let's try it without paraphernalia. Try it without fire, right? Don't hurt yourself. So this is like part one of my research on the form. I'm going into part two very soon. And yeah, this is where I'm at right now with tracing some of the ideas of the Limbo dance from, I could say, from 1940 to current. I know there's some in-betweens that is not yet revealed, but that is what research is about. So I am currently going to go into part two of my research on the Limbo dance. Thank you. Any questions, concerns?
With a lot of pressure. Go ahead.
Oh. Yeah. Part two is going to go more into I think there's there's some in-betweens in terms of when Limbo dance really came to Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm thinking about going that way to find out like when limbo dance really started to happen in Trinidad and Tobago and when it really started to happen in wakes. Because I think there's some missing parts in between in order for me to like fully understand why Julia Edwards took the dance from a sacred space and just started to like create this new version for the Limbo for the concert stage. So I want to go into that aspect because I think there's something deeper than just taking it from the backyard and carrying it on the concert stage.
So thank you. I'm sorry we don't have time for more questions, but if you have a minute or two to stay after, maybe ask questions in private, I encourage you to do that. I also wanted to let you know that we have one other program related to dance happening here tomorrow evening. There are two parts of it. It's Boca, Technica, and Diggity by Lena Blau. She's a dancer, choreographer, and PhD in dance anthropology. So she'll be having a conversation with some students earlier in the afternoon, and then at 5:30 she'll give a talk and performance here. And so, oh, she is here. Oh, so lots of dancers here to meet and over the next 2 days. So thank you everybody for coming out tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening.